Right, now, to give us more perspective in terms of what role the French are, of course, playing in the peace efforts, we're being joined by Ms. Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, who's a columnist at the London Telegraph. She's joining us live from Paris. Now, Ms. Moutet, this, of course, is going to be a crucial bit of diplomacy. The Parisians, the French government is, of course, hosting a conference on exploring as to how best to move forward from here to at least provide humanitarian assistance to the people in the Gaza Strip. What role, realistically, can Emmanuel Macron and his administration play?
Realistically, anything that has to do with the humanitarians is credible. First of all, because nobody refuses this, and second, because you already have on the spot organizations that were founded by French doctors, Doctors Without Borders, for instance, and Doctors Without and World Doctors. And so there are relays. There's an acceptance that France has an expertise on that and has had for the past 30 years since Bernard Kouchner was the foreign minister of France. The French are trying an effort coordinated with European Union. And they're in constant contact with the parties that will talk to them. I don't think they're in contact with Hamas because President Macron has been extremely strong-voiced about condemning Hamas as a terror document, but as a terror movement. Mm-hmm. But certainly for the rest, they are in contact with the governments in the region, especially Jordan and Egypt and the Gulf states.
Right, now, because you're joining us from Paris and you're tracking the developments there, you know, the fact that the French Cultural Center has been bombed in the Gaza Strip. Now, the French government is said to have reacted with astonishment and incomprehension as to how the French Cultural Center in the Gaza Strip could have in fact been attacked. What are you picking up at your end? Why is it that the French Cultural Center must have been bombed by the Israelis here?
Actually, the French have already received apologies from the Israeli army, from their spokesman, Colonel Rapovich. And the reason they gave to the French government was none of these, of course, were targets, neither the French Institute nor the office of Agence France Presse. What happened was the Israelis were targeting next to those buildings Hamas positions. Mm-hmm. And they were not hit by French missiles. They were hit by Israeli missiles. They were hit by the blowback of the explosions. There's right now, we're all waiting for a reaction from the foreign ministry and the presidency, but they have already acknowledged that the apologies have been offered and explanations have been offered.
Absolutely indeed. And now with the war still continuing and with these scenes of horrific, humanitarian suffering emerging from the Gaza Strip, the sympathy that the Israelis had, at the beginning of this war, in the immediate aftermath of the Hamas's attack, that sympathy seems to be eroding. And now the public opinion seems to be more on the side for a humanitarian ceasefire. The European leaders will be coming together on the 9th of October for this Paris conference. What do you think is the mood amongst the European leaders?
Well, the thing is that you've got several conflicting narratives, and I was hearing your presenter before we started talking, mm-hmm. saying things that have been now debunked, and for instance, in France and in Britain have been debunked. For instance, the numbers, the figures for killings are given by Hamas, and therefore right. These are figures that can be questioned. The other thing is that Israelis do not provide more than 12% of water in Gaza. Gaza sits on an aquifer from which it gets 88% of its water. And so many of those expressions are actually, they're very good propaganda tools, but they're not true. And the same thing for the fuel. There was a New York Times article
if I can just interject there, the fact is Israel is accused of having bombed the pipelines and also the generators that are used for the purification of water, effectively cutting off water supplies for the people in the Gaza Strip. And the death toll, this is something that even the American president had, of course, raised questions about, saying that these are figures put out by Hamas. But the way to, in fact, to verify this is for a humanitarian ceasefire to be put in place and for international observers to go in and to verify what the death toll is. Because looking at the scale of the devastation that's been wreaked, even the Israelis have admitted that they've dropped at least about 12,000 tons of weapons on the Gaza Strip.
That should be international observers at some stage, something that the French government completely agrees with. The French government has been in consultations about this with, as I said, everyone except Hamas itself. But the coming to a ceasefire is something that has to imply all the partners in this, and that also implies Israel.
Right. All right. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Muthe, for joining us and getting us that perspective.
Thank you very much.